You are correct that the Ewes have the same oral history as the Gadangbes. The reason is because the Ewes are also direct descendants of the Hebrew Israelites that migrated to West Africa by way of Egypt to the Gold Coast and Slave Coast, migrating from Israel through Egypt, Ethiopia, Southern Sudan, Niger, Nigeria, Dahomey to Togo. The reason we have the same oral history is because we are actually one people. We're Hebrews. Let me explain. When you go back in time to a strip of land in West Africa that was once called the Slave Coast, you will notice this geographical area stretched from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Benin, Dahomey, and Nigeria. These four countries that now occupy this stretch of land was one territory before the Europeans met in 1844 in Berlin to define their trade zones and as a result divided the African continent amongst themselves. This strip of land from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Dahomey, Benin, and Nigeria was known as Ewe Nyigba, that is Ewe land. And the people that occupied this stretch of land were called Ewes. Ewe is the original name of the people who lived on this stretch of land from Ghana to Nigeria. The name, however, morphed to Ewe because the V sound does not have an English equivalent. So the letter W was substituted for the V sound, and the name and pronunciation morphed to Ewe. Ewe is actually a female sheep. Where do we see the first time this name is used in the Torah? Genesis 14. And the fugitive came and told Abram, the Hebrew. The word rendered as Hebrew here is spelled Yud Resh Beit Ayin. In English, you will spell this I-V-R-I, and it's pronounced Ewe. So the text will read, Genesis 14, and the fugitive came and he told Abram the Ewe. Abraham the Ewe. Should you read from the Dead Sea Scrolls, you won't see the word Hebrew, but rather Ewe, what we now pronounce Ewe. This is the true name of the children of Israel, the Israelites. So where did the word Hebrew come from? We know it's Ewe. Where did the word Hebrew come from? The word Hebrew is an English rendering of the Latin Hebraicus. Hebrew is a derivative of the Latin word Hebraicus. A little over 2,000 years ago, Judea became a province of the Roman Empire, who had Latin as their national language. All the literature that people wrote and read was written in Latin, and those that were not were translated into Latin. During the translation of the Torah, Ewe became Hebraicus in Latin. If you notice, it's nowhere near Ewe. Hebraicus and Ewe, it's so far apart. After the Reformation in Europe, led by Martin Luther, translations of the Bible began into English. The translations were from the Latin version of the Bible, not from the original language. So instead of using the original name Ewe, they translated the Latin rendering Hebraicus to English as Hebrew. Hebrew, therefore, is a double translation of Ewe. The word Hebrew is a double translation of the original word Ewe. From the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Benin, Dahomey, and Nigeria, what you have without the artificial boundaries by the Europeans is Ewe Nyigba, Ewe land, or Hebrew land. We used to be one people, speaking the same Ewe tongue. One will ask, how did we then lose the Hebrew tongue and now have so many dialects? Well, it's interesting, but wars have been fought, both interesting and sad. The wars have been fought and many have died because of the problem of variation of dialect. And because of the lack of written history, we did not know we were fighting our own brothers and sisters. Who said we don't speak Evet? Who said we don't still speak Hebrew? Who said the original Evet tongue is lost? We'll answer these questions in part 2. If you should meet Moses or any of the prophets and you hand them a copy of the Torah or a Tanakh, they will not be able to understand a word of what's written in the book, even though they were the original authors. The reason is because the writing system currently depicted as Hebrew has no relationship with the original Hebrew symbols used in writing of the Torah. It would actually sound like gibberish if you should speak what we call Hebrew today with Moses or any of the ancient Israelites. So, what happened to the original language? And was it ever preserved? The answer will be yes. The ancient Hebrew was preserved. But before we get to that, let's find out what happened back in time that gave birth to what we call modern Hebrew or the modern Hebrew script. Let us journey back to when the Babylonians destroyed ancient Israel. After the fall of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar took a fraction of the people into captivity. Jeremiah puts the number much less than the 10,000 that the book of 2 Kings records. What happened to those taken into captivity will have lasting ramifications, and the writing system that they would develop in Babylon will ultimately give birth to modern Hebrew. However, a particular group amongst those who fled to Egypt when Nebuchadnezzar attacked and further migrated deep into the African continent, West Africa to be specific, retained a dialect of the original ancient Hebrew language, and they still speak it today, as we shall see in this series. Prior to the Babylonian exile, the Torah was written on either leather parchments or papyrus in ancient Hebrew, also known as Paleo-Hebrew. But in exile, the Torah was translated into Aramaic, that is the writing system of Babylon and Assyria, to preserve the text. This was the first time the scriptures was written in symbols, different from what was used by Moses and the prophets, which was pictograph. We know that the Medes and Persians defeated the Babylonians, and they freed the nations held captive in Babylon. The Hebrews then returned back to their homeland after 70 years, speaking Aramaic in addition to Hebrew. They also returned with some of their scriptures written in Aramaic. Example, the book of Daniel, chapters 2 verses 4, where we read the dialogue between Nebuchadnezzar and his sages, to chapter 7 verses 28, is in Aramaic, not Hebrew, but Aramaic. The Medo-Persians kept the Aramaic tongue, and it became the established language in the Levant. Alexander the Great came along and defeated the Medes and Persians, making Greece the new world power, and Greek became the lingua franca of the known world. So in addition to speaking Hebrew and Aramaic, the Hebrews started speaking Greek as well. There came a need for the Torah to be written in Greek, the language everyone understood and spoke. So Ptolemy set out and had the Torah translated into Greek, the birth of the so cherished Septuagint. This Septuagint will become the hot favorite for the next 300 years. The popularity of the Septuagint eventually contributed to its downfall. Scribal errors crept in due to the rapid diffusion of the Greek text, causing the content to vary from copy to copy. This alarming situation called for the need to restore the text to its original pristine state. This led to what we know as the Masoretic text. And for some strange reason, the Masoretic text was based on the Aramaic borrowed from Babylon centuries earlier. There is much evidence that the Hebrews returnees still spoke Hebrew in addition to the adopted tongues, Greek and Aramaic, over a century after the Romans destroyed their homeland. Actually, the findings at Qumran also confirms this. So why the leaders fell back on Aramaic is mind-boggling, but they did. What they did is they used the Aramaic writing style, and then they added the 12 vowel points like the commas, the patag, the yirik. These are called nikuds to help with pronunciations, since all the alphabets are consonants. This is how the modern Hebrew square script, with its added vowel points, came about. The transliterated version based on the Aramaic style became known as the Masoretic text. It was nearly a period of 2,000 years from the time of going into exile in Babylon to the introduction of modern Hebrew. During this period, the Hebrews had gone through 3 major language shifts. They had lost the ancient Hebrew. So to differentiate the modern Hebrew from the ancient original, they named the ancient Hebrew Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue, but correctly translated, the only tongue. This Lashon HaKodesh, however, was not lost to the Eves, the Hebrews, who migrated to West Africa. The Eves, the Hebrews, who inhabit what was Everland, now Ghana, Togo, Dahomey, and Nigeria. Of course, not everyone who lives in what used to be Everland, Hebrew land in West Africa, can speak or read the ancient Hebrew script. Most have lost any knowledge of this tongue, but the core group, the Anglon-Eves, the Anglon-Hebrews, which is made up of Judah and Levi, retain and still use Ewe, Hebrew, in their everyday speech. They will be able to read the original Hebrew script easily, since it's written in their dialect, and they are able to understand the meaning of the pictographs of the ancient Hebrew script, because it's part of their everyday language. The Levites are the Anglon-Eves, who can be found mainly in the Volta region of Ghana. The Judahites live mainly across eastern Ghana and western Nigeria. These two core groups speak different dialects of the ancient Hebrew tongue. I know that most don't know the ancient Hebrew consisted of dialects, which actually varied from tribe to tribe. We have a clear example in the book of Judges. Let me give a context first. There was a civil war between Ephraim and Jephthah, who was from Manasseh. The accusation was that when Jephthah was going to war, he did not call Ephraim to go with them, and the confrontation broke out. Jephthah took it that the Ephraimites came to fight him for not asking them to go to war with him. So he gathered all the men of Gilead and fought the Ephraimites and defeated them. The account is narrated in the book of Judges 12. Read the whole chapter, but I'm going to start from verses 5. The Gileadites held the fords of the Jordan against the Ephraimites. And when any fugitive from Ephraim said, "Let me cross," the men of Gilead would ask him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If he said no, they would say to him, "Then say Shibboleth." But he would say Siboleth, not being able to pronounce it correctly. Thereupon they would seize him and slay him by the fords of the Jordan. 42,000 Ephraimites fell at that time. What we see here is that the people of Gilead took an advantage of an Ephraimite dialect defect to identify who was and who was not from that tribe. Same Hebrew tongue and yet different dialect. The situation is still the same when you find the Levites and the Judahites, Eves, the Hebrews of West Africa after 2,000 years. From these two groups, we will focus on the dialect of the Anglon-Eves, the Anglon Hebrews, because they are the Levites and scribes. Their namesake, Anglon, means scribes or writers. Let's look at one example. Let's look at the first alphabet of the Hebrew language. We're going to look at the ancient Hebrew script and then the modern Aramaic script. The Aramaic script calls this letter Aleph, the first letter in the alphabet. The Aramaic script calls this letter Aleph. Aleph does not mean anything. Look at the picture of the ancient Hebrew and you will see the head of a sheep. Now, what is a sheep in the Ewe tongue? The Anglo-Eves, the Anglo-Hebrews. What is sheep? Ale. Ale, not Aleph. Look at the second alphabet in modern Hebrew. It's the Beit or Veit. It can be the letter B or V, which can be used interchangeably. The picture of the second letter of the ancient Hebrew is Bavo in the ancient Hebrew script. You see the B and the V, and they sure can be used interchangeably. Bavo. Let's look at the letter Yud. In ancient Hebrew, it shows a man with a hand flared out as a fan, blowing air. What is wind or air in the Ewe tongue? Ya. Ya is the correct pronunciation, not Yud. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing the words correctly in the ancient Ewe tongue, the Hebrew tongue, because it's not my dialect. What we see is that the modern Hebrew had to invent vowel points so you could read the consonants, but the ancient Hebrew symbols tells you which vowels to use. You don't have to invent anything. We will explain what I mean in part 3 and use the ancient Hebrew scripts to show the correct pronunciation of the tetragrammaton, what we spell in modern Hebrew, Yud, He, Vav, He, and correctly pronounce it. We say the correct pronunciation of that is Yahweh, not Yahweh. And we're going to use the ancient Hebrew script that Moses and the prophets used to prove that the name is Yahweh. Someone sent me a YouTube video to watch and then comment on. We're going to play 3 minutes of this video and then I give my comments on the information that is being shared. Let's watch the video.
You Africans got some damn nerve, man. The Israelite school at UPK been teaching the truth since 1969, and I'm going to show you today. Get me in Joel, where they said they sold us to the Greeks. Joel chapter 3, man. I'm going to show you all this article right here. You hold on. Read this article here for me, huh? I'm going to show you where you're going to start to read from.
That's right. I'm over here with John.
Hold it. Just go like this. You're going to read from right here. The House of Representatives. You see it? No sweat. Don't. Let's go this. The House of Representatives. Right there. All right? Read. The House. This is an article that a brother wrote documenting that the Africans are apologizing for their role in slavery to the blacks in America. What is that telling you? That they sold us to the white man. You all been gamed up thinking we African, and some white man went to Africa and stole us. That's a damn lie. The Ghanaians, the Nigerians, the Senegalese, the Cameroonians, them damn the filthy Ethiopians sold blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians to the white man in slavery, man. Read. Go ahead.
Many West African nations and tribes have issued apologies for their role in the transatlantic slave trade.
Read that again for all you Pan-African, I'm Africa, oh Mama Africa people, man, that think you some damn African. The Africans sold you into slavery, and right now they are apologizing for their role. Read it again.
Many West African nations and tribes have issued apologies.
Have issued what?
Apology.
Have issued what?
Apology.
You're only going to apologize if you do something wrong. And what them Africans did to black people was wrong. Was 400 years of a crime that they benefited. They got paid for each black man they sold into slavery. And you gonna come up here and tell me about praise Rastafari? Damn the Ethiopians, man. Damn you Africans. And you are going to serve slavery under a black man called Jesus Christ. Read.
Hey,
In 1999, President of Benin, a neighbor of Nigeria, apologized for his nation's role in slavery.
Yo, then y'all will never hear that. The American government will never put that on CNN. T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar and Louis Farrakhan ain't gonna never tell you that the Africans sold you into
It's
slavery.
very heartbreaking when I see brothers from these camps behave this way. They are repeating the same errors our ancestors made, which contributed to the transatlantic slave trade. The brother in the video read an article which stated that the leaders in some tribes in Ghana and Benin apologized for their role in the transatlantic slave trade. This is true, but we have to pause to find out why they apologized. There is a sign posted at the Cape Coast in Elmina Castle from the chiefs and leaders in Ghana that reads, "In everlasting memory to the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their root. May humanity never again perpetuate such injustice against humanity. We the living vow to uphold this." Because of not knowing the real details behind this apology, you have misinformed statements and wrong conclusions drawn by the author of the article that the brother in the video was reading. We have to be careful. We cannot read materials from Google and run off with it. The bare bones information we know of the transatlantic slave trade is that, number one, some African people sold fellow Africans to non-Africans for personal gains. This is false. Hamitic Africans did not sell fellow Hamitic Africans into slavery. Or did they sell their family members into slavery, like it was portrayed in the opening scene in the film Amistad, where a family sold a fellow family member into slavery? That is complete falsehood. Nowhere in African history did Hamitic Africans sell family or relatives into slavery. Number two, some Hamitic Africans sold Negroes or Hebrews for personal gains. This is half truth. It is not only Hamitic Africans, but also Negroes, Hebrews, also sold fellow Negroes or Hebrews into slavery as well. Therefore, the correct statement about the transatlantic slave trade should then be Hamitic Africans and some Hebrews sold Hebrews to non-Africans for personal gains. Or Africans and some Hebrews sold Hebrews to non-Africans for personal gains. Or we can word it further. Africans and some Negroes sold Negroes to non-Africans for personal gain. My point is, Hebrews also sold fellow Hebrews as slaves for personal gain. This is fact. The strip of land in West Africa that was once called the Slave Coast stretched from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, modern-day Benin, which was called Dahomey, and Nigeria, These 4 countries that now occupy this stretch of land was one territory before the Europeans divided the African continent to define their trade zones in 1844. The result is the current Africa as most people know it today. However, Evenyigba, Hebrew land, was the name of this strip of land that now house these 4 countries. The people that occupied this stretch of land were called Eves, Hebrews, or Eveville, Hebrew people. Because my brother mentioned Benin, let us focus on Benin. Let us focus on Dahomey. The people of Dahomey are from the tribe of Dan, modern-day Benin. An in-depth knowledge of their oral history, knowledge of their culture and tradition compares to information in the Torah. Their landmarks and city names agree with similar names in the Torah as well. The name Dahomey is actually a compound name. Da is the name of their ancestor and Home means home. When you put together, you get the home of Dan, specifically the home of the tribe of Dan. When you watch my video on the 12 tribes chart, you will get more information about the tribe of Dan. The link is going to be in the description box. Those camps who shout on these streets, "We are Hebrew Israelites and not Africans. The Africans sold us into slavery and we have no relationship with them." For your information, the majority of the victims of the transatlantic slave trade met their fate at the hands of fellow Hebrews. Hebrew on Hebrew crime. Do not be surprised. Do not think it's unheard of. We have the same atrocity documented in the Torah when Joseph was sold by his own brothers. This was repeated again when Hebrews in Africa sold their brothers as slaves to the West. And now we have some Hebrew Israelites from these camps in the West repeating the same atrocity, shouting, "Damn the Nigerians, damn Ghanaians, damn the Benins," not realizing they're damning their own Hebrew brothers. Don't forget, the majority of the Hebrews are in Africa, and our ancestors played a big role in selling fellow Hebrews into captivity. Take time and do a research on the kingdom of Dahomey, and you will find out they were one of the big players in the capture and enslaving of many of their neighbors. Dahomey is a member of the 12 tribes, playing a major role in the selling of fellow Hebrews into slavery. It is not only the tribe of Dan who did this. Other groups in the Congo also did this. So you want someone to blame. You want someone to damn. I suggest we look closer to home. This is why the leaders of these Hebrew tribes apologized. They are Hebrews because they are aware of the history. They now realize their ancestors had sold their own brothers and sisters into slavery. When a man points a finger at someone else to blame them, he should remember that 3 of his fingers are pointing back at himself.